Yeah, okay. Okay, good. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Blessed day, everyone. Welcome to this webinar session, and our topic for this session is all about project management tools and techniques, and some of the things that we're doing actually based on the experience in implementing projects. And just to go a little bit about the project, I hope we have a full understanding that the project has certain characteristics, and that number one, it has a set goal, objective. We wanted to emphasize that the project is being developed to address specific issues or concern. So we can't just do projects just because we wanted to do it, but we're doing it because it has a purpose, a very strong reason for doing it. And the second thing that I wanted to emphasize is that projects should be unique. The activities that you need to do is in line with the needs of your stakeholders. It has to be kind of unique. If you're going to do it repetitively, I mean, you're doing the same things over time, then it's not a unique one. Another characteristic of it is that it's time bounded. So project does not they do not have a longer lifespan. Probably 3 years to 5 years. That's a good timeline for a project, and definitely it is being affected in terms of cost, resources, performance, and time. Definitely, so these are the things that you need to watch out. Now, in the project management, what we are trying to do is that the manager, the one that's managing the project, applies all of the knowledge, the skills. It utilizes certain or specific tools and techniques to project activities to meet the project requirements. And it is very crucial that the one that's handling the project understand these tools and some of the techniques. We wanted to make sure that when you implement a project, and before implementing the project, you have tools that would assist you in the planning. You know, how are you going to control, how are you going to manage specific issues during project implementation, or even before that, you have means to determine whether there will be potential risk or a problem that may arise because of the different contexts and dynamics that you have actually foreseen. And coordination. Okay, so definitely the tools that we'll be utilizing are tools that can actually help in coordination of a project. So all of these are very important in project management. Okay, the advantages for having very good project management tools is that first, it will provide us better control of our resources. Efficiency is one of the major benefit of project management tools. We wanted to make sure that we are utilizing our resources efficiently, meaning in just small input, we can actually maximize that, okay, to produce a lot of significant results. We also wanted to use tools that will help us improve stakeholders' relationships. Now, in implementing projects for the past almost 2 decades of implementing projects, it's very important to have a tool that will guide you in understanding the different stakeholders' interests, the interplay of power and influence. These are very important. Definitely, it will be improving their productivity. So there are specific tools that can help us about that. Okay. Now, if we're not going to use specific tools and the management concept, there will be negative consequences like delays, cost overrun. Well, sometimes when we implement a lot of things because we don't have means to control it, or we haven't planned it out carefully, most of the times we actually overshoot the budget. We go beyond the approved budget or the planned budget, so that's problematic. And definitely it sometimes, because we haven't planned it carefully, or we haven't really understood the complexities and the context of it, and we haven't done analysis of these things, and we're actually wasting a lot of resources. Quality is also being compromised, and definitely our target beneficiaries, partner or clients would feel dissatisfied because we haven't really addressed their needs. And overall, now the negative side of it, if we haven't really managed the project effectively, then there is the risk for tarnishing your reputation, or your credibility as a project manager, or an organization that implements projects. So these are very critical reason, and the primary purpose of utilizing project management tools is to help managers plan, execute, and control all aspects of the project management process. Organizations rely on key tools for managing a project to ensure that each task is completed on time, and to balance staff workload for optimal time management. And because project management tools enhance resource efficiency and it ensures project scope, these tools are especially important for project managers that is involved with simple to medium to large and complex projects. So these tools are very, very important. What I will be sharing to you, these specific tools are actually simple tools that we utilize, and every project requires specific tools. So it's very important that you understand what you need. Okay, as a project manager, you have to know first what are the things that you wanted to achieve. What is your goal in the implementation of the project? If you are certain about that, and then it's easy for you to find out the specific tool that you will be needing. The way we do it is to look into the different phases of the project implementation. Like for example, at the very beginning of the design of the project, so we need to understand what will be the elements that has impact to the project. So we have a specific tool on that, and then just before we implement the project, we need to be certain that we have covered all the activities, the resources that we need, the time, the durations of it. So there's a tool that we will be going to do that. And along the time of implementing the project, there is a specific tool also that could help us, that guide us on how are we going to organize the activities, which comes first, which activity needs to be done, are we going to do it simultaneously, okay, specific like that. So these are the things. So let's tackle first the first tool that we will be discussing, and the tool that we were talking about is about the pastel tool. A project does not exist in a vacuum. That is for sure, and it is always dependent on various internal and external factors that can threaten its successful completion. Project managers need to take into account factors such as the political, social, and economic environment, even technology, legal, and other elements that actually has an effect that can affect a project's outcome. And understanding these external forces would give us more strategic decisions and steer the project into the right direction. So let's have the PESTEL analysis. The PESTEL analysis is an acronym for the various factors which surrounds a project's environment. For the P, it stands for political, E stands for economical, S is social, T technological, L is legal, and E is environmental. And there's still a lot more, but these are the basic elements. The analysis is also known as pastel, depending on how many environmental factors are included. And these methods actually takes a big picture or bird's view approach. So, and a bird's view approach, which means that it looks at the project in a wider context and takes into account how changes in the project's environment affect the project. The pastel analysis enables project teams to anticipate changes and include these changes into their planning instead of being surprised by by this element. So let's tackle first political factors that you need to consider at the community, municipal, provincial, regional, even the national and international. You need to understand what are the policies of the government that may affect your project. For example, tax policies, labor policies, peace and building policies of the government, all of the policies that you think may have an impact to your project. Election is one thing, it's always a bad timing to conduct activities during elections, and even during the period of campaign. These are critical time which we advise not to really do more field activities during this period. If there are significant also days somehow, like for example Ramadan for the Muslims, well, what will be some of the adjustments? Okay. The second one, the economical factors, you need to consider also, say, budget availability, import and export taxes, inflation, interest rates, economic growth or recession, exchange, minimum wage, all of these information that may help us understand better even the prices of commodity. Okay, that's a very important one. The next one is you can also include social or socio-cultural, which definitely include cultural norms and expectations, population demographics, how many are the youth, how many are the women, how many of these, okay, gender, ability, and population's general attitude towards certain issues like health, environment, and some of these issues. These are very important factors that has direct impact to your project. Technological factors that you need to consider includes new technologies that may replace older technologies, technical constraints, automation, research and development. So you really have to, and even the tools and applications that we have right now, this may possibly bring positive or negative impact to the project. Legal factors that you have to consider. Are there any employment law that has impact on it? Health and safety laws, regulatory frameworks. So before you can, for example, before you can start a construction project, you will have to get a building permit and have to make sure that the construction plan is accordance to regulations. The last one that we're gonna do here, the environmental factor. You need to consider climate and weather conditions. Now, this is very important. A lot of the projects are actually affected by the weather condition. For example, in mountainous areas which are not, the roads are not paved or cemented, then there will be difficulty accessing areas that have no constructed roads, things like that. Geographical locations and natural disasters. Okay, so all of these are important elements, and what you need to do for you to be able to form a very good pastel analysis is to brainstorm with your project team and also do a lot of investigation. You need to talk to the community, to the stakeholders, to everyone, okay? And you need to sort out and prioritize. So not every issues are of concern to your project. So you just have to sort out and prioritize and create action plan. How are you going to, for example, if the issue that we have is on the changes of administration in the barangay level, that's in the political, how are you going to address that? So probably what you may want to do in put it in your action plan is to do a lot of rapport building, coordination with the newly elected barangay chairman, for example, and then discuss the significance of the project, its purpose, and like that. So you really have to do like that, okay? The second tool that I really suggest for you to be equipped with is the stakeholder analysis. Now, this is very important, and a lot of project managers tend to forget about this one. You know, whenever you work on a certain project, sometimes you're thinking, why some people do not like the idea? Why is it that some people do not want to support the idea of the project, even though the intention is very good and there is a potential positive benefits for the target beneficiaries, for example. And so, it's extremely frustrating, particularly when you're sure that your work would have delivered real results, and if only you've been allowed to continue. So as you develop and as you continue implementing the projects, you become very, very visible to your activities are actually affecting more and more people. And the more people you affect, the more likely it is that your actions will impact people who have power and influence over your work. And these people could be strong supporters of your projects, or they could block them. So you need to identify who these people are and win them over. So the tool that we're going to use for that is stakeholder analysis, which is the first step in stakeholder management. It is an important process that successful people use to win the support from key stakeholders. It allows managing stakeholders and help them to ensure that their projects succeed where others might fail. Okay, so how do we do the stakeholder approach? We will be discussing that, and the benefits of the stakeholder analysis would be, first, it will be getting your projects into shape. Now, you can actually, when you talk to your stakeholders, you can actually use the opinions of your most powerful stakeholders to help define your projects at an early stage. And these stakeholders will then more likely support you, and their input can also improve the quality of your project. Okay, that's number one advantage. Second, winning resources. Now, if you have the support of powerful stakeholders, it can help you to win more resources, such as people, time, or money, or networks, and it makes more likely that your projects will be successful if you have that. Also, it builds understanding, and once you have a better analysis of your stakeholders, you're actually understanding their interests, and that you can anticipate and predict their reactions to your project as it develops, and this allows you to plan actions that will more likely win the supports. Okay, so the next question that we need to know to answer is, how do we conduct a stakeholder analysis? And there are lots of steps to follow. Actually, 3 steps, major steps in stakeholder analysis. The first is to identify who are your stakeholders, definitely. So you have to start by brainstorming who your stakeholders are, and as part of this, you think of all the people who are affected by your work, by the project, who have influence or power over it, or have an interest in its successful or unsuccessful conclusion. So, for example, in a community, who are the policymakers, who are the influential, who are people who you think might antagonize or may say something negative about the project. So you have to determine them. Okay. Now, you need to remember that stakeholders can be both organizations and individual people. But ultimately, you must communicate with people. That is very important. Now, it's sometimes just because we send a communication to a company and you have not really specified who is the focal person for that company, you weren't able to communicate very well the purpose of your communication, it won't make any sense at all. So you have to make sure that we communicate with the people. Be sure to identify the correct individual stakeholders with a stakeholder organization, within the organization. The second step is to prioritize your stakeholders. You may now have a list of people, so many organizations and individuals that are affected by your work, but some of these may have the power either to block that work or to advance it. Some may be interested in what you are doing, while others may not care. So you need to work out who you need to, to prioritize, and you can map out your stakeholders and classify them according to their power over your work and their interest in it. So you need to know the power and the interest, okay? And there will be 4 sections of that. On the highest side, who are the people with the power that you need to keep satisfying, okay? You need to satisfy them most of the time. And then individual organization that you need to manage closely. At the bottom of it are at the bottom power, minimal effort only. These are the groups or individuals that you don't have to monitor usually. So minimum effort. But the right side of it are groups or individuals that you need to keep informed. That they have a lot of power, but you still need to inform them very, very well because they have high interest. So power up, interest going to the horizontal line, and the degree of it low from here going high on that side. Power at the bottom, down, going up. Okay, so you need to have. So the position that you need to allocate to a stakeholder is very important. High power, highly interested people, you need to manage them closely. So you must fully engage these people and make the greatest efforts to satisfy them. So this is the most important one that you need to do. High power but less interested people, you just have to keep them satisfied, put enough work in with these people to keep them satisfied, but not so much that they become bored with your messages, okay? Low power and highly interested people, you have to keep them informed, adequately inform these people and talk to them to ensure that no major issues are arising, and people in this category can often be very helpful with the detail of your project. And the last one, the low power, less interested people, you don't have to monitor much, monitor this bit, but don't bore them with excessive communication. So those are the things that you need to consider. The last step here is understanding your key stakeholders. You have to discover how your key stakeholders feel about your project. You also need to work out how best to engage them and how to communicate with them. Key questions that can help you, asking questions like, what financial or emotional interest do they have in the outcome of your work? Is it positive or negative? What motivates them most of all? What information do they want from you, and what is the best way of communication with them? What is the current opinion of your work? Is it based on good information? Who influences their opinion? If you don't think that you'll be able to win them around, how will you manage their opposition? So these are the things that you need to find out, okay? So I hope you can do a stakeholder analysis. We can see that in the way you deal with your stakeholders. Okay, now, so we are down to conducting now, the project. And so just before you actually do it, you need to understand the intricacies of your project. So you have to understand what are the major tasks that you need to do, and each of these major tasks are specific activities that you need to ensure you have conducted or implemented, because it affects the overall deliverables. Now, the tool that we need to use here is what we call the work breakdown structures, and according to PMBOK, WBS is a deliverable-oriented hierarchical decomposition of the work to be executed by the project team to accomplish the project objectives and create the required the deliverables. The WBS actually defines the total scope of the project, and you may think about the family tree, and that is they are a tree structure showing the subdivision of components necessary, the branches, to deliver a project or program. And the work breakdown structure are actually very useful for establishing an agreement between stakeholders and project team members as to the scope of the project. In general sense, we can think of the WBS as, having the project as the main deliverables, and you have major deliverables and on the different levels. So level 1, level 2. Okay, so you have that. So how do we get started in coming up with your WBS? If you think about starting a project, we begin with a project charter and preliminary scope statement. This defines the high-level goals and deliverables of the project. We then create the project scope document, which further defines these deliverables into a list of all deliverables and requirements of each. And the next step is to use this comprehensive list of deliverables to build the WBS. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. To start, we have to identify all the major project deliverables, and one way to do this is to involve the project team as a group to identify what are the major deliverables from the project scope statement. So you have bigger, which, for example, your project is about, say, preventing violent extremism through social enterprise. So what the major activities would be, number 1 would be social preparation. That's your major activity 1. Second one, organizing community members. The third one, capacity building. And then fourth one, the social enterprise framework, capacitation, and the rest of it. And for example, in the major activity 1, which is social preparations, it has specific activities like, for instance, you need to do stakeholder analysis, you need to do SWOT analysis, even some tools that you have to utilize, and then after that, after knowing the different activities under that, then you could assign specific duration on how many days you're going to conduct on each of that subtask. Okay, so you organize it in a vertical fashion, and you define the WBS component, the WBS components. We can decompose the major deliverables defined into lower level components. And you can assign identification codes and verify the WBS. Okay, so so the important thing about the WBS is that for each of the specific tasks, you have the duration, how many days, what is the starting date and the end date of using that. Okay, and also the resources. So that is a very important information. But you need to understand that in coming up with the work breakdown structure, you have to appreciate that you don't need to be crazy. What you're trying to do is to define the work of the project or program so you can easily plan, manage, and control that work. So you should only decompose the plan to a level that allows you to achieve this aim. So you cannot just identify a lot of activities for that. You have to be specific on it, prioritize also, okay? So that's how you do it. I wish there is a way for us to discuss further this one, right? But the WBS is also a very good platform for you to come up with very, very good plan. And speaking of that, the fourth tool that I will be discussing with you is a tool that will help us in the planning, and that is the Gantt chart. The Gantt chart. So we've been hearing often about the Gantt chart and what we know about it. The Gantt chart typically includes when the project is due, when to start and finish each task, how long each task takes, who is responsible, which task depends on the others, and how each task is categorized or grouped. So the questions that we would like to answer is that why the need for us to use a Gantt chart? typically people use Gantt chart to visualize a project plan. And while it's not the only way to create a visual view of your work, they can be particularly helpful for certain types of work. For example, Gantt charts are a good option to consider if you need to visually map out a project plan and timeline, organize complex projects, you coordinate the multiple stakeholders, and estimate timelines and workloads. So these are advantages of Gantt charts. Okay, so but we have to understand that there are pros and cons of Gantt charts. Like first one, the advantage will be giving you a bird's eye view of your project timeline. It shows how tasks are related to each other, and it helps you better manage your resources. But the downside of it is that it's really time consuming to set up now. It really takes days for us to develop the Gantt chart. And sometimes, you know, team members are kind of artistic and creative, so they use a lot of colors, and sometimes it's kind of tiresome to the eyes. It's difficult to manage the project in the same place you planned it, and it adds more details. Yes, it has the ability, I mean, the chart would allow you to add more details, and it becomes very, very messy. Okay, so you know, in building the Gantt chart, it's actually very simple to build the Gantt chart. What you need to do is to identify the major tasks. For example, the major task number one is research baseline study. Okay, that's one. Number one. And under that, 1.1 is the research design. 1.2 training of enumerators. 1.3 conduct of actual research and data analysis. Blah blah blah. Now, so you have to complete first the whole activities and sub-activities, and on the horizontal side of it is the schedule. So when are you going to do it? For example, and this is what we do usually in the for each month. So you're actually doing a monthly schedule, but each month you will be dividing it into weeks. So under August, for example, today September, so you have 4 weeks. So 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 1W, 2W, 3W, 4W, and then for the next month you also do that. Okay, so you have sub columns on it, and you put. So if you're going to use either Word or Excel, you're actually also putting a color on it on that specific. Cubicle, what do you call that, the square of the column. So that corresponds to specific task and the time frame. So for example, under the major activity research, 1.1 is on the research design. So your team thinks that you can actually do and finish the design for a 1 week period, and we will be doing it on the 3rd week of September. So you have to color, or others will just put it X or check on that. Sometimes, to be more specific, they put a specific date under that column. What do you call that? The square part of it. So they actually put, for example, September 21 to September 27, but that falls into the week 3 under the September month. Okay, so that's how you do it, and until you are able to complete the whole process of it. So it's a little bit lengthy, but these are very important. So far we were able to discuss at least 4 pastel, which we use to analyze different elements, external factors that may affect us, and so we need to determine how are we going to counter that. If it has negative impact to our project, how are you going to manage that? The second one is about the stakeholder analysis. We need, this tool is very important for us to determine who will be our champions, who will be potential, the naysayers of your projects, and understand how are we going to manage them. The third one is the work breakdown structure, which the WBS, which provide us the logical sequences and also the different steps. Okay, so it gives us a very wider appreciations of the things that we're gonna do. And in using the WBS, you can actually plot your Gantt chart, which provides you the timeline for each of the specific sub-activity that you have identified. Okay, so for now, that's how we do it. And well, the most important thing also in managing a project is really to have tools that will help you get the feedback of the stakeholders and the target beneficiaries or your community partners. It's important to have that because, we can only determine whether we're doing good or not by really listening to the feedback of our target clients and stakeholders. So what we do actually in our project is that we have monthly feedbacking with them. So either we go there at the ground and conduct a focus group or a key informant interview or roundtable discussions with them. Any mechanism that would allow us to capture that feedback, concerns or recommendations. And the tool that we're using is the monitoring progress tool, and we have that. We have a management monitoring tool that we use. We're using Excel. You can actually create diagram shapes in the Excel. So it's very good to visualize the progress. So we have that. The feedbacking, so different approaches and methodologies in doing that, but you need to capture that in a certain document. So you have the Excel as an important tool, what you actually show there is the baseline and the progress, so you can actually see are we improving or not in all of the deliverables that we have identified. Another tool also is that you have to consider is how are you going to strengthen the communication. For example, of your the impact of or the results of your activities. Now it's very important because if you wanted to create awareness about the project's significance, then you have to have tools that will help you amplify that. So a very important tool nowadays is social media, Facebook, but you have to be very, very good in designing that. You need to develop personnel who are very good in capturing informations in very simple statements and in very concise ones, short ones, because as you know, a lot of people today are not actually reading, they just read the title and that's it. For them, that's it. So we need to change that approach, but what we can do to adjust it is to come up with concise and simple statements that is, that could effectively convey the message that you wanted to tell. And then you have to select the right photos or video clips that you're going to upload. Be very, very critical on that. Branding your project is very important. It's the identity of your project, so it tells everything. The way you post the words that you use, the way you manage the comments or suggestions of the community. All of these really affect the branding of your projects. And so we were able to tackle that. And one more, I think there are also tools that you can actually find out. There are numerous tools. You can go to www.projectmanager.com. They have a free trial, 30 days of free trial, so that's good enough. Good time, enough time for you to understand better the approach. And there are also software. Another important tool that you have to also include is that if you're looking at managing your finances, there is a certain software that can actually help in managing it. And for example, QuickBook is a very, very good tool. Everything you just have to input it, and it helps us in analyzing it, in recording, in maintaining, in converting all of that into informations that are understandable by the different stakeholders. So you can actually choose different software that can help you. But basically what we do, manually is using only the Excel spreadsheets. These very cheap, it's free and very, very helpful also. You just have to be very, very good and accurate in the information. The downside is that, we're humans and we do commit a lot of errors, and sometimes when we have a very, very slight error, the impact is huge to the organization or to the project that we are. So these are tools. You may be having different tools which are very fine. The most important thing is that these tools are the things that you need. Definitely you need it. You believe that it can help you manage, control, plan, contextualize the project, and can get you to produce effective results. Also, it will help you, reduce costs, the efficiency side, the productivity sides of it. Okay, so there may be lots. And if you have questions for this session, for this topic, I encourage you to send us your questions. You can communicate with us just like the Moropreneur.com Facebook page. We have a Facebook page at the Moropreneur. You can send us private message or send us also email, themoropreneur@gmail.com. We have a website, www.themoropreneur.com. And that's it, everyone. Thank you for listening and for participating. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.